I'm going to go over some more tips and tricks, things that are a little bit too short to make their own dedicated videos for, but that can be quite helpful. The first one is one that has been suggested in several of the comments on some of my recent videos, and that is using your military ships with one of your commanders to go and scout early systems. This can give you valuable information on how the hyperlanes connect up, where different hostile fleets are or other empires. If you're going to use this strategy, do be aware that it's a little bit more risky since they will actually battle things that they encounter, and if they're really weak, they might not be prepared for that, whereas your science ships are good at usually running away. One really useful recommendation that I got from a commenter named Matthew Edwards was that you can actually use the period key to advance the game by just a single day. So if ever you're really want to have fine-tuned control over the exact time that passes, it can maybe be quite tedious, but this can allow you to make sure that you have perfect control over your ship so you can respond to things. The next tip is to zoom in on these first contacts when you first get them and visually look at them. Sometimes you can get a lot of information about what it is. That can be useful in prioritizing which first contacts you actually want to complete. So for example, this is the artisan trope because it's the purple station. Something like this might not be as high priority when you're trying to get contact with an empire. And in this example, we can look at them and we can see these are mining drones. And for example, in this case, we actually see another empire science ship. So we know that this is another empire. You can also see what ship set they're using, which maybe gives you a little bit of information about, like whether they're using mechanical ships or biological ships. In addition to this early scouting, you can also think about kind of what direction you see them from, try and predict where you think they came from. If you manage to actually find, like, say, one of their worlds, you can get a lot of information about them just by looking at their planet. Like, what is their species? You can open up these menus and also see what their ethics are, generally speaking. So we can tell there's a lot of authoritarian militarist. You can use that to go, is this going to be an enemy or is this going to be friendly? You can also determine, like, from the jobs, like, oh, this is a corporate authority because of the executives. Once you've met an empire, you can actually go to offer trade deal and then information communications. If this number is 0, then that means you already know everyone that they know, so they can't actually give you anything. But if this number is negative, that means they know someone that you don't, and it can actually give you communications. You can give them communications in return if you've met other people, or you can just give them some basic resources or something. Then if they accept their trade deal, you get communications. This can allow you to meet other empires much more quickly. The one downside to doing this is you do not get the influence that you normally get for completing a first contact. In a similar vein, you can also offer trade deal for active sensor link, which will give you their knowledge of the map. So this will allow you to see everything they can see, such as where all of their ships are. You can see all of their planets. Overall, this is a great way to get knowledge about other empires, though they will refuse this if they have a neutral or negative attitude of you. A really useful thing that you can do with your fleets is if you have a whole bunch of them and you've just finished a campaign and you want to get them all back to your territory really easily, particularly if you have a really big empire and you have like one fleet that you want to have stationed up north and another fleet that you want to have over here, another one over here. Instead of manually having to redo that every time you use your fleets, each fleet can have a home base assigned to it. So you can click here and pick which starbase you want them to go to. You can also take the fleet and right click on the starbase, set as home base, and then you can select all of your fleets and then hit this return button. And all of your fleets will return to their home bases. That will help them repair, get them where they need to go. If for whatever reason your fleets get trapped and they are unable to find a path back to your territory, you can also use this to make them go missing in action. This is very similar to when you lose a battle, and then they will arrive back in your territory after a certain amount of time. This can be useful, for example, if, say, an empire suddenly closes their borders to you or something like that. Talking about managing fleets, another really useful thing that you can do is, much like most RTS games, is control groups. So you can select the fleets you want to assign to a control group, hold down control, and then hit one of your number keys. So I've assigned all of these 4 fleets to control group 1. So I press 1 and I select all of them. So you could maybe have fleet 1, fleet 2, quickly toggle between them and select them very easily. You can see your control groups down here. You don't only have to do military fleets. You can also do your armies, or you can even actually do your planets if you want to. You can also do it for your science ships, your star bases, and several other things. Sometimes you can get a whole bunch of notifications that clutter up the screen, and it can be kind of annoying constantly clicking away from things that you know for sure you're not going to be doing. Say, for example, you have an Ascension perk and you're waiting for a certain technology to unlock to get the one that you actually want. You don't want any of the ones currently available. If any of these bother you, you can control click them. This opens up them in the messages and alerts setting. So you can toggle whether they happen or not, whether they actually pause your game. You can also clear this search bar and just look at a list of all of them. The next one is that these map modes down here can be quite useful. I find myself using the opinion map mode a lot to just quickly see who really hates me and who really likes me. You can also click on other empires to see what their diplomatic relations look like. This can be a good way of seeing if you have 2 mutual friends that actually hate each other. Using the diplomatic map mode is a good way to see other empires' claims. You can also enable being able to see your sectors at a glance. And also normally you can only see what the system is actually collecting in terms of resources when you hover over it. If you enable detailed, this will show you all of the resources you're getting from your mining stations and research stations. You can also see things like special projects that are available. When it comes to star bases, you can't actually control their designs for the main station. This can leave them quite vulnerable to certain things. In particular, things like torpedoes are very effective against star bases that don't have any point defense, and they don't naturally have any point defense. So this is where defensive platforms can be very useful in specifically customizing what you want your starbase to have. Adding in some point defense early game can be very useful. Another thing is that these are the best ways to get access to hangar bays early in the game. Normally you need either cruisers or battleships, or you need to specifically build the hangar bay modules after you unlock the actual research for it. But since strike craft can be quite powerful, this can be a really good defensive option. So maybe you get some point defense and a hangar bay section. Something like this could be a really good early game defensive platform to build. Doing that will allow your star bases to be just a little bit more self-sufficient. Rather than needing to defend them with an actual fleet, you can save that naval capacity for your more offensive actions. A really useful thing for your armies is the Rally Troops button. This will mean that new armies will automatically go to them and reinforce, rather than needing to manually merge them up all the time. So if you go to the army hub and you build a whole bunch of armies across several of your different planets, as they finish, they will automatically travel to your main army and go join with them, reinforce them. They can be a little vulnerable when they're traveling through space on their own, so you want to make sure you have a clear path to your actual armies. But this can reduce micromanagement a lot, and you typically are going to be reinforcing your armies quite a bit as you take losses. Kind of in a similar vein, if you're fighting a war with an ally, you can use this take point option on your fleets to tell the AI that you want them to follow that fleet. This can be useful to somewhat control what the AI will do, prevent them from unnecessarily charging forwards into battle on their own in a really bad situation. This is a very late game tip because it requires a juggernaut, but I learned recently that actually you can use a juggernaut that's stationary. If it enters the orbit of it, they can repair just like you can at a starbase. So not only can juggernauts build ships, they can actually repair them too. That is really useful for deep in enemy territory. particularly when you're fighting something like a crisis and there's not a lot of starbases available. In a normal war, you just capture an enemy starbase and you can use that to repair. This only works if the Juggernaut is not moving. It has to be stationary. Another useful thing that you can do is if you have a building that you don't immediately need right now, but you don't want to pay the upkeep for it, instead of just demolishing it, you can actually disable it, and this will act as if it doesn't exist. It won't apply its benefits, it won't give any jobs, but it also won't cost its upkeep, and then you can just turn it on whenever you want it again. So if, for example, your planet doesn't have enough pops to fill the jobs, but you want to build the building now while you're thinking about it, you can build it, then disable it, and turn it back on once you have the pops to fill those jobs. Or if you just conquered an enemy planet and its population is for some reason missing, this can be another option for saving on that upkeep. Unfortunately, districts do actually need to be downgraded. You can't disable them. If you're not careful about it when you conquer worlds, you can end up getting quite a deficit of different resources, so it's worth paying attention to. So that's all the tips I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and with that, goodbye.